A very good afternoon to all the viewers. Welcome back to another episode of BW People HR Voices. Today we have with us Ms. Seema Unni, the head of Human Resources Function and a regional leader at Fidelity Investments India. Seema has an experience of over 25 years in the areas of HR, business partnership, mergers and acquisitions, leadership, and organizational development. Prior to joining Fidelity, Seema was with Arthur Andersen and Ernst& Young. She's also a member of NASSCOM, the National HRD Network of India, and IMA India. Firstly, welcome, Seema. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Savi. I'm really excited to be here.
So, for all the viewers, today's topic for discussion is going to be empowering growth through experiential learning. So, Seema, for all the viewers, could you just give an overview of what experiential learning is? And in the context of talent development, how do you think it differs from the traditional approaches that the organizations have been following for so many years?
Yeah, so I think I'd put it in two ways, Savi. I think one is as we look at experiential learning, it's really based on the whole model of the 70-20-10 method of learning, which is 70% is learning through experiences, 20% is learning through exposure, and 10% is learning through education. And so the whole experience, exposure, and education format, in my view, is quite universal. I think ever since I started my career and looking around in the industry, all of the learning has evolved across this model over the years, right? Where in the beginning, it was largely, learning by sitting in a classroom, more educational, more instructor-led training in a room, and then having mentors through exposure. But in the last, 10 years, and I would say largely in the last 5 years, Fidelity Investments India, like any other organization, has really moved into this exponential growth in experiential learning because the attention span of employees, as well as I would say general citizens, has reduced dramatically. And I think there's a study which literally says that the attention span is reduced by about 40%. I read that in one of the studies. And so when you think about the attention span that has reduced, the whole concept of preferences, learning preferences, has moved from sitting in a class for 8 hours to learning by doing. And I would say that preference has changed. And then finally, when we think of experiential learning, it's more about learning a skill that is very relevant, just in time, here and now. And then also looking at the next 2 years, what are the skills that I will need to develop? So the whole skill development cycle has also gotten shortened by a very, very, huge magnitude. So those are the three reasons why I think experiential learning becomes really significant. And we in Fidelity Investments India, we are really experiencing that. And a lot of our training ecosystem is now predicated on experiential learning.
Right, that's great to know. But Ms. Seema, when we talk about experiential learning, one of the challenges that comes along with it is ensuring that the experiences are aligned with the organizational goals, also with the individual's development goals. Right. So as an HR leader, how can you ensure that these opportunities are strategically designed?
Yeah, so all of our learning, from an HR leadership perspective, if I look at the human capital strategy, it starts with a business need. So what are some of the business drivers? What customers are we pursuing? What are the opportunities and challenges in different customer spaces? And so it obviously starts from there when we design a learning strategy or learning culture globally. So if I think about it, it starts from what are the top, let's say, 20 skills from a technology perspective or from a business, domain perspective, or even from a leadership and a soft skill perspective that is required from a business, and a customer standpoint. Then what we do is we look at individual development plans because, as I said, my earlier comment, learning is becoming very personalized and extremely customized, right? So today's learning suite of offerings that we offer in Fidelity has has a big bouquet which basically caters to personalization and different learning preferences, largely self-paced learning as well. But I would say that there are a lot of cohorts that we bring into a class. For example, we call this whole concept of moving away from instructor led for 8 hours, right, where there was a sage on the stage that was really talking about learning. We have moved from a sage on the stage to a guide by the side, and we adopt a lot of individual development plans in our performance management system, which is then tied to what is the customer need. So there is a customer need, there is a business need, then there is an individual journey on the skill quotient, and there's a sweet spot in the middle. So I think there is a manager and an employee has to have that conversation. So the way we marry this is it's about the customer need, but then the manager has to contextualize it for his or her team. And then finally for the individual that he's coaching, right? And so I had a woman leader the other day who came and spoke to me about how she has brought the whole AI ML concept to life for her particular team. So AI ML is required from a COE perspective, but then she has contextualized it for her organization in terms of coaching plans. And then every individual is at a different skill quotient, and then how do the individual learning maps get drawn out. So I actually think it's that sweet spot that we have to find, but we have to design an ecosystem which has the overall strategy, what is the team construct and coaching that is required to contextualize it, and then what is the individual learning roadmaps. So we have to look at it at three levels and enable the support and the ecosystem.
Right. So you just mentioned about AI and ML. We'll discuss more about that. We're seeing that technology is advancing every day. Generative AI and Meta has come into the space and it's really transforming all the processes. So what kind of technologies or let's say platforms is your organization using to enhance these learning experiences?
So I'd say there are three or four ways that we engage with experiential learning. The first thing is we have very immersive methods where on the job goals get set for what learning has to be enabled, right? And this is very hands-on, tailor-made, coaching-based learning. And we call it kind of just having very immersive kind of experience-based learning on the job, where the goals are drawn out and then there is coaching that actually is juxtaposed with the goals. The second thing that we do is our learning ecosystem also tries to build in a lot of simulations like a capability development center to build some of these skills, right? Because you can learn it in theory through various platforms, but then how do you apply those skills is very important. And so there are these capability development centers in some of our groups that have very upcoming skills as well, where they learn on the go and they're able to simulate some of their learnings in actual real-time case study environments.
Mm.
Um, the third thing I would say is we have something called an open marketplace for gig assignments.
Right.
So any manager or any employee can post a particular gig, let's say a short-term project, and any other employee from a different business group can sign up to participate in that particular gig. And it's obviously a form of expanding and enriching one's skill set. But that is also experiential learning because today it's all about those gigs and an open marketplace of learning. And then finally, we have what we call the teach to lead. I strongly believe that leaders play a very important role in providing experiential learning, right? And so Teach to Lead is a kind of a program where leaders are actually learning catalysts or they are trainers for different kinds of skills, right? From entry level skills to more proficient skills to expertise skills. But we have a lovely gradation of learning catalysts who are largely from our leadership pool. And our leaders can bring it to life because they have solve real business problems and they can coach as well. So these are the 4 or 5 methods that we distinctly use really in our entire journey. And the good news is the platforms that we have in terms of self learning are based on AI algorithms, right? So if I do a particular skill, I then will have the next array of skills that come to me, which are companion skills, and I can continue to build my skill quotient. So I think we work with an array of platforms which are extremely intuitive, but also very intelligent in guiding our employees.
Right. It's great to know what Fidelity is doing in this space. But just implementing these initiatives is not enough. Tracking the progress to understand what outcome they bring That is also very important. So, what could be some of the KPIs or let's say metrics that you use to evaluate these initiatives?
Yeah, so I'd say that as we think about our learning ecosystem, there are two big aspects from a strategy perspective. One is, preserving the core, and then the second is building for the future, right? So when we think about metrics, talent metrics on both preserving the core skills and building for the future, I think we track our metrics really in two ways. One is what is the value generation and business complexity of roles that are increasing from one year to the other? Because ultimately, the higher the learning quotient in an organization, the higher performing that organization is. And then finally, that will result in value generation and business impact in actual roles. So we track what is the trending of global roles that our employees play out of India to be trending with that value complexity. So that's one metric, and learning has a big correlation with that, especially experiential learning. The second metric really is our employee satisfaction surveys, which we obviously call it the Associate Pulse Survey in Fidelity. We track the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, and the big indicators of the Net Promoter Score are, grow and develop as well as apply new skills in terms of metrics. So we have metrics on apply new skills and grow and develop that we track for all our employees on our Pulse surveys that we run. I would say that is the second metric. The third piece really is about innovation. So, what is our innovation index? What are the number of patents that we have generated? And that again is an indicator of learning. So I would say those are the few metrics that show us whether we are a learning organization, do we have a growth mindset, and how are we, engaging in adaptive methods. So those are some of the metrics, Savi. But we constantly learn from research, from best practices in the industry, and then our own associate and employee voice.
Right.
How we continue to enhance it.
Right. I think incorporating employees' voices into the framing of these initiatives is very important. So now, Seema, we are seeing that after the pandemic, the remote work and the hybrid work is on the rise, right? So when with this distributed workforce, how does experiential learning adapt to address the needs of this workforce spanned across India or across countries?
Yeah, so I would say that, digitization has, I think, leapfrogged several generations in our country. And it's such a proud moment as we think about how digitally savvy our workforce has become, right? I mean, a lot of the reports from different, research institutions show that growth in the digital mindset. So, from a learning standpoint, I think there are two or three things. One is from an experiential learning standpoint, I actually do believe that we have the opportunity, and in Fidelity, we do a lot of that. We provide sandbox environments for our employees to try and test proofs of concept. And that can happen only, through a very firm digital, savvy kind of learning strategy. So sandbox environments, again, is linked to that experiential learning, where they learn something in a classroom, but then they come in and they are able to apply that skill in a sandbox, develop a proof of concept, and then get coached on it. So it's that environment, I would say, that's the first part. The second part is we do a number of hackathons and simulations, both to understand, let's say, technology, business domains, even leadership skills, right? Like I know during the pandemic, a lot of it was around leading change and how do we thrive in change. And there were a number of simulations that we ran, frankly, all digitally because everyone was really digital through change management, but very immersive in terms of classroom interaction, even on those digital channels. The third thing I think that we do, and we have seen some good progress with, is the pandemic actually democratized learning and brought all of the learning institutions across the world to any country and any region across the world, right? So we have our management development programs where professors teach us from anywhere in the world, sitting in their university, and we are able to leverage that in our evening time or a midday time, depending on which university we've tied up with. So I think that the digital aspect has actually gotten completely democratized. It has brought the world together, made it quite flat. And the institutions which would never have been even reachable pre-pandemic, the whole mindset, as well as some of the even the pricing system of institutions and universities has changed now globally. So I think we are leveraging all of that, and that's what I see as the goodness of some of this digital transformation in learning.
Right, I agree with you. But so experiential learning, implementing these initiatives, they can also be very resource intensive. So how do you justify investment in these programs in terms of return on investment? What kind of outcomes have you seen that have significantly changed throughout the years? What are your views on this?
Yeah, so I think experiential learning, I see it in two ways. One is it's resource intensive only if we keep adding kind of too many experiences with no ROI, right? I think my view on this resource intensification is slightly different because I truly believe that if you have the ecosystem and the experiential learning, which is driven by your real time work, your platforms at scale, learning platforms at scale, and through managers and leaders in their everyday experience by coaching,
Right.
um, you don't have to add a large team of people to the learning organization or a large budget to the learning organization. You're able to leverage a systemic view so that it's not resource intensive, right? And therefore I think the way we have done this is we have said, okay, what are the platforms at scale that are going to be intelligent and guide our employees on skill quotients increasing year on year? um, how do we centralize all learning programs that are needs globally? So, for example, manager effectiveness is a
Mm.
need that is global. Why should every business have its own manager effectiveness program? We can just scale it globally and have the same learning solutions globally on manager effectiveness. So it's not resource intensive anymore because we have gathered clusters of competencies together and we have put it out at scale in one program or let's say one solution. And then the final thing I would say is that, ROI, in my view, is really about the cost and the return. And for us, the return is really about the learning culture and the number of, the impact that we have on customers, the impact that we have on actual products and solutions, and then finally on patents, like I said. So our ROI is little more long term, Sabi. It's not so short term to say, okay, what are we getting in the next 3 months? Now, obviously, when new hires join us, the speed to market or the speed to floor, is in some sense accelerated because we have all of this experiential learning, but we also have learning on through education and exposure. So I think we track it a little differently for new hires, where we would like the speed to come, deliver on the job, being accelerated. But I think it's different for different cohorts. So that would be the ROI. On leadership, it's all about creating purpose and vision.
Mm.
So most of our leadership experiential learning is about how do you motivate and inspire a workforce of today and a workforce of the future. Um, and then we have 360 feedback surveys. We've got reverse mentoring programs. All of that give us feedback on how we are all doing as leaders. Are we able to instill purpose in the workforce, which then results in retention metrics, job satisfaction, and many other elements. So that's kind of the way I would divide it from a new hire perspective, leadership, and then finally, really for all our employees.
Right. Thank you for sharing these insights. So most of our viewers, they are HR leaders, employers, employees. What would be your last piece of advice to them?
So I'd say two things. One, I think, is that the learning ecosystem is extremely dynamic. And so I do think that it's going to be a combination of education uh, and inspiration. I call it the EI, emotionally intelligent learning ecosystem, which is that you have to be able to appeal to the heart and mind of the learner.
Mm.
So the way we design our kind of future solutions has to be globally available, has to be self-paced, has to appeal to the head, heart, and mind of our employees, and has to be very relevant from a business perspective, but also from an individual growth perspective. So it's the emotionally intelligent ecosystem from a learning perspective that I would think, we're going to be challenged to design, and we have to be very ready for it to be dynamic and adaptable.
Right.
That would kind of be my, 2 cents really on the future of the learning ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Seema. Thank you for giving us your time and joining us on our show. Thank you once again.
Okay, thanks so much, Savi.